The mating ceremony of Valdoria was where the forgotten went to be claimed. And as Carenza stood among the other unclaimed women, she knew she was the most forgotten of all. She wasn't beautiful enough to catch wandering eyes. She wasn't wealthy enough to tempt ambitious men. And the faded brand on her inner wrist, hidden beneath a frayed ribbon, marked her as something worse than plain or poor. Cursed. Daughter of a moon witch, carrier of death. No one would choose her. No one ever had. So when the elderly woman stumbled beside her, gasping for breath in the crushing crowd, Carenza didn't hesitate. She gave up her place. She shielded the frail stranger with her own body. She offered her only cup of water, the one she'd been saving since dawn. It was a small kindness, the sort no one would notice. But someone did. When the Alpha King of Valdoria arrived, every woman straightened. Every heart raced with desperate hope. He was power incarnate, shadow and steel, beautiful in the way storms are beautiful. He could have chosen anyone. He walked past noble women draped in silk, past daughters of generals and merchant princes, past every woman who had prepared her whole life for this moment, and stopped directly in front of Carenza. "Her," he said. "I choose her." The hall erupted. Carenza couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't understand why the most powerful alpha in 5 kingdoms had chosen the one woman everyone else had overlooked. She didn't know that the elderly woman she'd helped was watching from the shadows, smiling. She didn't know that single act of kindness would change everything, and she didn't know that loving him would nearly destroy them both. The great hall of Valdoria had been transformed into a garden of desperation. Flowers hung from every pillar, their sweetness doing nothing to mask the sharper scent beneath. Fear, hope, longing, and the quiet rot of shame. Carenza breathed through her mouth as she took her place at the far edge of the platform, as far from the torchlight as she could manage. The mating ceremony happened once every 3 years. For most women, it was an opportunity. For Carenza, it was a death sentence delayed. "Move aside," a woman hissed, shoving past her. Silk brushed against Carenza's worn cotton dress, leaving behind a trail of expensive perfume. "You're blocking the light." Carenza stepped back without argument. There was no point fighting for a position she would never hold. She scanned the crowd instead, counting exits out of habit. 2 main doors, both guarded, a servant's passage behind the dais, half hidden by velvet curtains, high windows that let in the last copper light of sunset. No escape. Not that she'd expected one. Around her, the other unclaimed women shifted nervously. Some were widows hoping for second chances. Others were daughters of fallen houses, their bloodlines still valuable despite their reduced circumstances. A few, like Carenza, had been placed here by families eager to be rid of them. Her stepmother Lysara had made the terms clear that morning. "If no one claims you tonight," Lysara had said, examining her reflection in a silver mirror, "you'll be sold to the Eastern traders by week's end. I've already negotiated a price." Carenza had not responded. Responding only made things worse. 22 years old. Her father dead when she was 7. Her mother executed when she was 12. Branded and alone ever since. That was the sum of her life, and tonight would likely be its end. She touched the ribbon at her wrist, feeling the raised scar beneath. The crescent moon. The mark they'd burned into her skin after her mother's execution. "Witch's daughter," the magistrate had intoned, "carrier of the death curse. Let all who see this mark know what she is." And they had known. Every household that might have taken her in, every family that might have offered marriage to a man with low standards, every merchant who might have hired her for honest work. The brand had closed every door. Now only one remained. The mating ceremony, where men came seeking women no one else wanted. Not for love, never for love. For labor, for warming beds, for bearing children who would never know their mothers' names. It was degrading. It was desperate. It was her only chance. A commotion near the entrance made Kerensa look up. A cluster of servants rushed toward an elderly woman who had stumbled against one of the flower-laden pillars. She was clutching her chest, her weathered face pale beneath a simple gray hood. "Out of the way!" a guard barked. "The ceremony begins soon, no commoners on the floor." The elderly woman tried to speak, but no words came. Her legs buckled. No one moved to help her. The noble women looked away, protecting their fine dresses. The guards seemed more concerned with clearing the obstruction than aiding a struggling stranger. Kerensa watched for 3 heartbeats, then 4. Then she was moving before she could stop herself. She caught the woman before she hit the stone floor. "I've got you," Kerensa murmured, bracing the frail body against her own. "Breathe. Just breathe." The woman's hand found Kerensa's arm, gripping with surprising strength. Her eyes, pale silver beneath the hood, locked onto Kerensa's face. "Water," the woman rasped. Kerensa reached for the small flask at her belt. Her only water, saved since dawn. She'd planned to drink it after the ceremony when no one was watching. She pressed it to the stranger's lips without hesitation. The woman drank slowly, color returning to her cheeks. When she finished, she looked at Kerensa with an expression that made no sense. Wonder. Recognition. Something like triumph. "Thank you, child," she whispered. "You have a kind heart." "Anyone would have helped," Kerensa said quietly. The woman smiled, soft and sad. "No, they wouldn't. I've been to many of these ceremonies. You're the first who has." Before Kerensa could respond, a guard stepped forward and pulled her roughly back toward the platform. "Return to your place," he snapped. "The ceremony is beginning." Kerensa stumbled back to her position at the edge of the platform, her heart still racing. When she glanced over her shoulder, the elderly woman had disappeared into the crowd. But something was happening near the main doors. Guards were straightening. Servants were scurrying. A strange hush was falling over the hall. And through the silence, Kerensa saw the elderly woman lean close to a tall guard in silver armor and whisper something that made his eyes go wide. The guard turned to look directly at Kerensa. The doors of the great hall exploded open. Kerensa felt him before she saw him. Every wolf in the room felt him. An alpha presence so overwhelming it crashed through the hall like a physical force, pressing against her chest, making it hard to breathe. This was not ordinary dominance. This was ancient bloodline power, the kind that existed in legends, the kind that made other alphas bare their throats on instinct. The Alpha King had arrived. Tavian of Valdoria walked into the ceremony as if the world had been built specifically for him to inhabit. He was tall, taller than any man Kerensa had ever seen, with black hair that fell past his shoulders and eyes the color of a winter storm. Gray, cold, absolutely merciless. He moved like shadow-given form, each step deliberate, his long coat trailing behind him like dark water. Beautiful. That was the word people used. Kerensa thought dangerous fit better. Whispers erupted through the crowd. The king himself? At a mating ceremony? He's refused every princess offered to him. Why would he come here? Perhaps he's finally gone mad. The shadow sickness claims them all eventually. Kerensa didn't understand the last whisper, but she filed it away. Shadow sickness. She'd heard the term before, but never in connection with the royal family. The auctioneer who had been preparing to begin the ceremony stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from water. "Your Majesty," he finally managed. This is an unexpected honor. If you'd like a private viewing of the candidates, we could arrange." "Continue," Tavian said. His voice matched his presence. Low, controlled, utterly devoid of warmth. The auctioneer swallowed hard and began his recitations. Kerensa barely heard him. She was too busy watching the king, trying to understand what could possibly bring the most powerful man in 5 kingdoms to an event meant for claiming the unwanted. Tavian walked slowly along the platform, passing each woman without pause. A widow draped in mourning silk, a young mother clutching the hand of a small child. 3 sisters from a disgraced noble house, their chins held high despite their circumstances. He glanced at none of them. Kerensa felt her heart climb into her throat as he drew closer. She pressed herself back against the pillar behind her, willing herself to be invisible, to be overlooked, to be as forgotten as she'd always been. The king passed the woman beside her, a merchant's daughter with honey-colored hair. And then he stopped. Directly in front of Kerensa. She couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare at the buttons of his coat because looking up, meeting those winter storm eyes, felt impossible. The silence stretched. She could smell him now. Not the heavy musk of most alphas, but something sharper. Pine and frost and something beneath it all that reminded her of midnight. "Look at me." The command in his voice was absolute. Kerensa's chin lifted before she could stop it, her eyes meeting his. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, perhaps. Or recognition, though that made no sense. Up close, she could see things the distance had hidden. The shadows beneath his eyes. The slight pallor beneath his bronze skin. The way his jaw was clenched, as if he were fighting against pain. "What is your name?" he asked. "Kerensa." Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "Kerensa Vorn, Your Majesty." Vorn. His eyes dropped to her wrist, where the ribbon had slipped slightly, revealing the edge of her brand. "The Moon Witch's daughter." The words hit her like a blow. Of course he knew. Everyone knew. "Yes," she said quietly. "If that displeases Your Majesty, I understand. I would not expect—" "You helped an old woman earlier," Tavian interrupted. "You gave her your water." Kerensa blinked. "How did you—" "She told me." Before Kerensa could process this, Tavian turned to face the stunned crowd. His voice rang through the hall like a death knell. "I choose this one." Chaos erupted. Noblewomen cried out in protest. The auctioneer sputtered incoherently. Somewhere in the crowd, Kerensa heard her stepmother Lysara's distinctive shriek of outrage. But the king didn't seem to notice any of it. He was still watching Kerensa, his expression unreadable. "You will come with me," he said. "Now." It was not a request. Kerensa's legs moved on their own, carrying her off the platform past the gaping crowd, toward the doors where royal guards waited in silver armor. As she passed, she caught a glimpse of the elderly woman from earlier, standing in the shadows near a pillar. The frail stranger met her eyes and smiled. Then Kerensa was through the doors, and the woman was gone. The carriage moved through the darkening streets in silence. Kerensa sat rigid on the velvet seat, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Across from her, barely visible in the shadows, the Alpha King watched her without speaking. She could feel his gaze like a physical weight. The castle grew larger through the window, towers piercing the violet sky like black teeth. Kerensa had seen it from a distance all her life, a monument to power she would never touch. Now she was being carried toward it like cargo, chosen for reasons she could not begin to understand. The carriage stopped. A footman opened the door. Kerensa stepped out onto smooth stone, her worn shoes making no sound. Guards flanked her immediately, though whether to protect her or prevent her escape, she couldn't tell. "This way," Tavian said. She followed him through corridors that seemed to stretch forever, past tapestries older than her family name, past servants who bowed without meeting her eyes. The castle was cold despite the torches flickering on every wall, cold in a way that felt intentional. Finally, they stopped before an iron-banded door. Tavian pushed it open and gestured her inside. The room was a study, lined with books and maps and the accumulated weight of generations. A fire burned in the massive hearth, but its warmth didn't seem to reach the king standing beside it. "Sit," he said. Kerensa perched on the edge of a chair, her spine straight, her hands folded in her lap. For a long moment, Tavian simply looked at her. Then he spoke. "You are afraid." Yes, Carenza admitted. There was no point lying. He could smell her fear. Of me? Of everything, Your Majesty. She met his eyes, forcing herself to hold his gaze. I don't understand why I'm here. You could have chosen anyone. Princesses, noblewomen, women without... She touched her wrist. Without marks. And yet I chose you. Why? Tavian moved away from the fire, and for the first time, Carenza noticed something strange. Despite the flames roaring behind him, his skin held no warmth. When he passed close to her chair, she felt the temperature drop, as if winter lived beneath his flesh. My mother was at the ceremony tonight, he said. The woman you helped. Carenza's breath stopped. The elderly woman? She was Queen Mother Nerida of Valdoria. A ghost of something, not quite a smile, crossed his lips. She has a habit of attending these events in disguise, looking for something, someone. I don't understand. Tavian sat in the chair across from her, his movements controlled, deliberate. My mother believes in signs, portents, the old ways. He paused. She believes that a person's true nature is revealed in small kindnesses, when no one is watching, when there is nothing to gain. I wasn't trying to gain anything, Carenza said quietly. She needed help. I helped her. I know. His gray eyes studied her face. That's why I chose you. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the castle, a clock chimed the hour. I'm going to make you an offer, Tavian continued. You are free to refuse. If you do, you will be returned to your family with a purse of gold sufficient to establish yourself independently. You will owe me nothing. Carenza's heart was pounding. And if I accept? You will become my wife, Queen of Valdoria. The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. Queens were beautiful, wealthy, and powerful. Queens were not branded orphans with cursed blood and nothing to offer but shame. Your Majesty, Carenza managed. I think there's been a mistake. I can't be what you need. My blood is tainted. My mother was executed for practicing forbidden magic. I carry her mark. Everywhere I go, death follows. Her voice broke. Everyone I've ever cared about has died. My mother, my father, the family that took me in after. That's why they call me cursed. That's why no one will... I know what they call you, Tavian interrupted. I know what they believe. I don't care. You should care. Carenza was crying now, tears sliding down her cheeks. If you marry me, the curse will touch you too. It touches everyone eventually. Tavian leaned forward. For one strange moment, she thought she saw something flicker beneath his skin, something dark, moving. Let me tell you my terms, he said. Then you can decide if you still think your curse is the worst thing in this room. Carenza wiped her eyes, waiting. This marriage will be political only, Tavian said, his voice flat. You will have titles, wealth, and protection. You will want for nothing. In return, you will give me an heir to continue my bloodline. And love? Carenza whispered. Companionship? Something shifted in his expression. Pain, perhaps, or resignation. I will not love you, he said quietly. I cannot. That is my condition, and it is absolute. Carenza stared at him, uncomprehending. You will live in comfort. You will be treated with respect. But you will not share my bed beyond what is necessary for conception. You will not share my life. You will not know me beyond the surface, and I will not know you. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why would you want a marriage like that? Tavian stood abruptly, turning away from her. In the firelight, she saw his hands clench at his sides. Because if I love you, he said, his voice barely audible, you will die, and so will I. Before Carenza could respond, he strode toward the door. You have until dawn to decide. My guard will show you to your chambers. And then he was gone, leaving her alone with the fire and a choice that felt like stepping off a cliff into darkness. Kerensa did not sleep. She lay in the massive bed they'd given her, staring at the canopy above, replaying the king's words until they lost all meaning. If I love you, you will die, and so will I. What did that mean? What curse could possibly make love itself lethal? By dawn, she had her answer. Not an understanding, but a decision. She would accept. Not because she believed she could be a queen, not because she wanted wealth or titles or comfort, but because for the first time in her life, someone had looked at her mark and not flinched. Someone had heard her name and not turned away. Tavian didn't want her love. He didn't want her heart. He wanted an arrangement, cold and clinical and safe. That, Kerensa could give him. Her heart had been frozen since childhood anyway. The council chamber was larger than her stepmother's entire house. Kerensa stood at the entrance, flanked by 2 guards in silver armor, trying not to tremble as every head turned toward her. A long table dominated the space, surrounded by men in fine robes, advisors, ministers, lords with sharp eyes and sharper tongues. And at the head of the table, dressed in black as if mourning something already dead, sat Tavian. Beside him, in a chair that seemed almost throne-like, sat the elderly woman from the ceremony, Queen Mother Nerida. She looked different now, regal and composed, but her silver eyes held the same warmth they had when Kerensa gave her water. Lady Kerensa, Nerida said gently, please, sit. Kerensa took the chair indicated, painfully aware of how her simple dress looked among so much silk and velvet. The marriage contract has been prepared, one of the advisors announced. A thin man with a pinched face and disapproving eyes, though I must state, for the record, my objections. Noted and dismissed, Tavian said flatly. Continue. The advisor's jaw tightened. The terms are as follows. Lady Kerensa Vorn will become Queen Consort of Valdoria. She will receive all titles, properties, and privileges associated with that position. In exchange, she will provide the crown with an heir within 5 years of the marriage. Kerensa felt the weight of every gaze in the room. Additionally, the advisor continued, the king has specified several unusual conditions. The queen will maintain separate chambers. She will not be required to attend daily court functions, and she will be provided with... He paused, his lip curling slightly. Personal staff who will ensure her privacy at all times. Privacy? Another lord asked. What sort of privacy? The sort that is none of your concern, Tavian interrupted. His voice could have frozen water. The doors burst open. Kerensa's stomach dropped as Lysara swept into the chamber, her stepsister Marin trailing behind. Both women were dressed in their finest, faces arranged in expressions of wounded dignity. Your Majesty, Lysara said, dropping into an elaborate curtsy. Forgive this intrusion, but I could not allow this farce to continue without speaking. Tavian's expression didn't change. You are? Lysara Vorn, this girl's stepmother. She gestured dismissively at Kerensa. I raised her after her mother's execution, fed her, clothed her, gave her a home despite the dangers she posed to my own family. How generous, Nerida murmured. I feel it is my duty to warn your majesty, Lysara continued, ignoring the queen mother entirely. This girl is not what she appears. Her mother was a moon witch, executed for murdering 7 people with her cursed magic. The taint runs in the bloodline. We are aware, Tavian said. Then you must also know that everyone who grows close to her dies. Lysara's voice rose with theatrical grief. My own husband, her father, dead within a year of marrying her mother. The family who fostered her after, all dead within months. She is poison, your majesty. Wherever she goes, death follows. Kerensa sat frozen, unable to speak, unable to defend herself against words she half believed were true. Are you finished? Tavian asked. Lysara faltered. Your Majesty, I am trying to protect you. No, Tavian stood slowly, and even from across the room, Carenza felt the temperature drop. You are trying to prevent your stepdaughter from ascending to a position that would place her above you. You are trying to maintain control over a woman you have treated as a servant and a scapegoat. And you are doing it by speaking ill of her dead mother in my council chamber. The room had gone utterly silent. Lesara Vorne, Tavian continued, his voice soft and terrible. You have 5 seconds to leave this room before I have you removed permanently from my kingdom. Lesara's face went white. She grabbed Marin's arm and fled without another word. The doors slammed shut behind them. Carenza realized she was shaking. She couldn't look up, couldn't meet anyone's eyes, couldn't do anything but stare at her hands clasped in her lap. Lady Carenza. Tavian's voice made her flinch. She forced herself to look at him. Do you accept the terms of this contract? He asked, knowing everything that has been said, knowing what I've offered and what I've withheld. The advisors watched her with skepticism. The lords watched her with curiosity. Nerita watched her with something that looked almost like hope. Carenza stood slowly. I accept, she said. Her voice was quiet but steady. Your terms are more than generous, Your Majesty. You offer me protection, dignity, and purpose. That is more than I have ever been given. She paused, gathering her courage. And for what it is worth, she added softly, I am grateful. Not for the wealth or the titles, but for the fact that when my stepmother spoke against me, you did not believe her. Something flickered in Tavian's gray eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or something deeper. Sign the contract, he said finally. Carenza signed. As she set down the quill, she felt a hand on her shoulder. Nerita had risen and crossed the room to stand beside her. Welcome to the family, child, the Queen Mother whispered. I knew you were the one the moment you gave me your water. Before Carenza could respond, her stepsister Marin appeared in the doorway, having slipped away from her mother. Carenza, Marin called softly. A word? Please? Against her better judgment, Carenza followed her into the corridor. The moment they were alone, Marin's sympathetic expression vanished, replaced by cold fury. You think you've won? Marin hissed. You think becoming queen will erase what you are? Marin, I never wanted... I know what happened to the Thornwood family. Marin stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. The ones who fostered you after your father died. Everyone believes it was fever, but I've been watching you for years, Carenza. I know what you really are. Carenza's blood turned to ice. The king might be fooled by your innocent act, Marin continued, but I'm not. And when I prove what you really are, even he won't be able to protect you. She smiled sweetly, squeezed Carenza's hand as if in sisterly affection, and walked away. 3 days later, Carenza stood before the mirror in her bridal chambers, unable to recognize the woman staring back. The gown was silver and white, embroidered with tiny moons that caught the light like captured stars. Her dark hair had been swept up and woven with pearls. A delicate veil covered her face, hiding the fear she couldn't quite suppress. She looked like a queen. She felt like a sacrifice. You're trembling, Nerida observed gently. The Queen Mother had insisted on helping her prepare, dismissing the servants so they could have privacy. I'm terrified, Carenza admitted. Good. Nerida adjusted a fold in the veil. Terror means you understand what's at stake. It means you won't be careless. Carenza turned to face her. May I ask you something, Your Grace? Anything, child. Your son. Carenza hesitated. He said that if he loves me, we'll both die. What did he mean? The warmth in Nerita's eyes dimmed, replaced by old grief. That is his story to tell, when he's ready. But I will say this. My son has spent his entire life preparing to die young. Every king in our line has. The curse takes them all eventually. What curse? Nerita touched Carenza's cheek with weathered fingers. The same one that made you the perfect choice. You understand loss, child. You understand living with the expectation of death. My son needs someone who won't be destroyed when... She stopped, composing herself. He needs someone strong. Someone who knows that love is not always a gift. Before Carenza could respond, a knock came at the door. It's time, a guard announced. The cathedral was magnificent and merciless. Thousands had gathered to witness their king finally take a bride. They packed the pews in their finest clothing, craning their necks for a glimpse of the mysterious woman who had emerged from nowhere to claim the throne. Carenza walked alone down the endless aisle, painfully aware of every whisper, every stare, every judgment. Where did she come from? I heard she's a witch's daughter? Look at her wrist. Is that a brand? She kept her eyes fixed on the altar where Tavian waited in formal black, his pale hair swept back, his expression carved from stone. But as she drew closer, she noticed something wrong. His skin was too pale, almost gray in the candlelight. His jaw was clenched with what looked like pain. And when she finally reached him and he took her hand, his fingers were ice cold. Not cool. Cold. As if he'd been standing in a snowstorm. Your Majesty, she whispered. Are you well? Proceed, he said to the priest, ignoring her question. The ceremony blurred past. Vows were spoken, words Carenza would barely remember later. Rings were exchanged, the metal burning warm against her finger while his touch remained frozen. Then came the moment she dreaded. You may kiss your bride, Your Majesty. The cathedral held its breath. Thousands of eyes fixed on them, waiting to see the mysterious queen's face revealed at last. Tavian turned to her. Through her veil, she could see his gray eyes studying her face. They want to see you, he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. I know. Carenza's heart hammered. Will you lift my veil? Do you want me to? Strange question. Strange man. A king asking permission instead of taking what was his by right. Carenza thought of the brand on her wrist, the whispers that would follow if they saw the Moon Witch's daughter crowned queen. I don't know. Tavian nodded slowly. Then, to the shock of everyone watching, he lifted her gloved hand to his lips instead. The kiss was gentle, formal. His mouth pressed against her knuckles for just a moment, cold as winter frost. The crowd erupted in confused murmurs. The queen's face remained hidden. The king had chosen not to unveil her. Why? What was he hiding? But Carenza didn't care about the whispers. She was too focused on Tavian's face, on the way his jaw tightened with suppressed pain, on the strange shadow that seemed to flicker beneath his skin when she looked too closely. Something was wrong with him. Very wrong. The celebration that followed was a blur of music and food and false smiles. Carenza sat beside Tavian at the high table, accepting congratulations from nobles whose names she immediately forgot, while servers brought dish after dish that she was too nervous to eat. Tavian ate nothing, drank nothing, spoke only when directly addressed, and then in single syllables. You should eat, Carenza ventured during a brief lull. I'm not hungry. You're ill. It wasn't a question. Tavian finally turned to look at her fully. Up close, she could see the shadows under his eyes, the gray tinge to his lips, and the slight tremor in his hands. Not ill, he said quietly. Just cold. Cold? Always cold. A ghost of something, not quite a smile, crossed his face. I've been cold for as long as I can remember. Before she could press further, the master of ceremonies announced that the king and his new queen would retire for the evening. Carenza's heart stopped. The wedding night, the consummation, the part of the contract she'd been trying not to think about. Tavian rose and offered his hand. She took it, feeling the chill of his skin even through her gloves. As they left the great hall, she caught a glimpse of Maren watching from a corner, her eyes sharp and calculating. And in the corridor outside, walking ahead of them toward the royal chambers, she saw Nerida pause and press her hand to her heart, her face creased with worry. Something was happening, something everyone seemed to understand except Carenza. In the king's chambers, she would finally learn the truth, and it would terrify her. The royal chambers were vast and cold. Carenza stood just inside the door, trying to control her breathing as Tavian moved to the fireplace. He added log after log until the flames roared high enough to heat a small house. It made no difference. The room remained cold. He remained cold. "You're afraid?" Tavian said without turning around. "Yes." There was no point in lying. Of me? Or of what we must do? Carenza considered the question honestly. Both. Neither. I don't know. He finally turned to face her. In the firelight, the shadows under his eyes looked like bruises. The gray tinge to his skin was more pronounced now, away from the flattering candlelight of the cathedral. "I will not force you," he said quietly. "The contract requires an heir, but it does not specify when. If you need time, how much time do you have?" The question came out before she could stop it. But something in his face, something in the careful way he moved, told her that time was exactly what he didn't have. Tavian went very still. "You're observant," he said finally. "You're dying." Carenza stepped closer, studying his face. "I've seen death before. I know what it looks like when it's coming." For a long moment he said nothing. Then he sat heavily on the edge of the bed, the gesture so human, so exhausted, that it made her heart ache. "The curse," he said quietly. "The one I mentioned. It's killing me slowly. Has been since I was born." "What kind of curse?" "Shadow sickness. That's what they call it." He held up his hand, and in the firelight, Carenza saw something that made her gasp. Beneath his skin, dark veins pulsed with something that wasn't blood. Black tendrils spreading from his heart outward, visible through his flesh like cracks in ice. "Every king in my line carries it," Tavian continued. "A curse placed on my ancestor generations ago by a powerful witch he wronged. We live, we age, but the shadow grows inside us. By 40, most of us are dead." "How old are you?" 32. Carenza's throat tightened. 8 years. Perhaps less. "Is there no cure?" "There's supposed to be one." Tavian's laugh was bitter. "The curse was designed to be broken by love, by a mate bond so strong it burns away the shadow." He shook his head. "My father tried. Married for love, bonded completely to my mother. The shadow consumed him in 3 months." Understanding crashed over Carenza like a wave. "That's why you can't love me," she whispered. "That's why you wanted a cold marriage, because love makes it worse. Love accelerates the curse. The deeper the bond, the faster the shadow spreads." Tavian met her eyes. "If I fell in love with you, I would be dead within a year. And the curse, it reaches for the mate too. My mother survived only because my father died before the bond fully formed." Carenza sat down beside him, her legs suddenly unsteady. "So we must conceive an heir," she said slowly, "without falling in love, without forming a real bond." "Yes. And you chose me because you are already marked by death." His voice was gentle, not cruel. "Because you have lived your whole life expecting loss. Because I thought, if anyone could survive being married to a dying man without being destroyed by it, it would be you." Strange logic, terrible logic. And yet, Carenza understood it completely. "I won't fall in love with you," she said quietly. "I don't know how." Something flickered in his eyes. Relief, perhaps, or something sadder. "Then we understand each other." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a strip of dark silk. "What is that?" Carenza asked. "Pa, a blindfold." Tavian's voice was careful, controlled. "Tonight, and every night we must be together. I will wear this. I will not look at you. I will not learn your face in firelight. I will give you the privacy you deserve, and I will protect myself from knowing you too well." The thoughtfulness of it made her throat tight. "You would do that?" she whispered. You gave an old woman your only water when you had nothing. You accepted a marriage to a dying stranger with grace and dignity. Tavian pressed the blindfold into her hands. The least I can do is protect your privacy. Carence's fingers trembled as she reached up to tie the silk around his eyes. She had to step close, had to rise on her toes. Up close, she could see things the distance had hidden. The individual lashes lying against his pale cheeks, a small scar at the corner of his mouth. The way his breath came slightly faster as her fingers brushed his temples. The blindfold secured, she stepped back. The candles, she said. I'll put them out. She extinguished each flame one by one until only the fire remained, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Then she returned to stand before him. Complete darkness. Just his breathing and hers, mingling in the cold air. You're still trembling, he said softly. I haven't. I know. His hand found hers in the darkness, his touch gentle despite its chill. We'll go slowly. Tell me if you want to stop. He drew her closer, and Carenza felt the cold radiating from his body, seeping through her thin nightgown. But beneath the chill, she felt something else. A current of something warm, something yearning, barely suppressed. His hand settled on her shoulders, large and cold, but impossibly gentle. His thumbs traced small circles against her skin, and despite the temperature, she felt warmth bloom where he touched. You're so warm, he murmured, wonder in his voice. I forgot what warmth felt like. Does it help? The warmth? I don't know. His fingers slid beneath the straps of her nightgown, pausing. May I? Yes. He slid the fabric down her shoulders with aching slowness, his fingertips trailing over her skin like frost. The nightgown pooled at her feet. Carenza shivered, but not from cold. She reached for him in return, finding the buttons of his shirt. Her fingers fumbled in the darkness, clumsy with nervousness. But she managed, one by one, until she could push the fabric away and feel the planes of his chest beneath her palms. Cold, so cold, like pressing her hands to ice. And yet, beneath her touch, she felt his heart beating strong and fast. Your heart is racing, she whispered. So is yours. He pulled her closer, and when their bare bodies pressed together, they both gasped. Heat and cold colliding. Fire meeting frost. Something electric passing between them. Tavian made a sound low in his throat, something between pleasure and pain. His arms wrapped around her, drawing her flush against him as if trying to absorb her warmth. Tell me to stop, he said roughly, and I will. Don't stop. He lifted her easily, carrying her through the darkness to the bed. When he laid her down, his body covering hers, Carenza felt surrounded, protected, overwhelmed in ways she had never imagined. His mouth found her neck, his lips cold but soft, sending sparks of sensation through her entire body. She arched into him instinctively, her hands gripping his shoulders. He was gentle, patient, impossibly careful. When they finally came together, there was a moment of discomfort that made her tense. But Tavian stilled immediately, his forehead pressed to her shoulder, his breathing ragged. Breathe for me, he murmured. Just breathe. She breathed. The discomfort faded. And then there was only sensation, only connection, only the extraordinary feeling of being known by someone in the most intimate way possible. They moved together slowly, finding their rhythm. Carenza heard sounds escaping her that she'd never made before, felt pleasure building in ways she hadn't known existed. You're so warm, Tavian gasped against her throat. Gods, you're burning me alive. The words should have been alarming. Instead, they made something fierce and tender bloom in her chest. When the pleasure finally crested and broke, it overwhelmed her completely. She cried out, her body arching against his. He followed moments later, his cold body trembling against her warmth. For a long time afterward, neither spoke. They lay tangled together, breathing hard, hearts racing in sync. Then Tavian rolled away slightly, and Carenza heard him removing the blindfold. "Don't light the candles," she said quickly. "I won't." His voice was rough. "Are you well?" "Yes. More than well. Transformed." "Are you?" A pause. "I think so." His hand found hers in the darkness, his fingers intertwining with hers. The gesture felt more intimate than anything they'd just done. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For being warm." Carenza smiled into the darkness. Then, slowly, she shifted closer to him, pressing her body against his side. "You're still cold," she murmured. "Let me help." She felt him tense, then gradually relax as her warmth seeped into him. His arm came around her, holding her close. Within minutes, his breathing evened out into sleep. Carenza lay awake, listening to his heart beat against her ear, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest. She shouldn't have looked. Should have kept her eyes closed in the darkness. But curiosity won, and she glanced down at his chest in the faint glow of the dying fire. Her blood turned to ice. The black veins she'd seen earlier had spread. They covered half his torso now, pulsing darkly beneath his pale skin, reaching toward his heart like grasping fingers. And where her body pressed against his, where her warmth touched his cold skin, the tendrils seemed to writhe, as if reaching for her too. He returned the next night. Carenza had spent the day convincing herself he wouldn't. The contract required only conception, not companionship. He'd made his terms clear. Separate lives, separate chambers, nothing beyond what was necessary. But when the sun set, a knock came at her door. Tavian stood in the corridor, hands clasped behind his back, his posture rigid with uncertainty. "I came to inquire after your health," he said stiffly. Carenza bit back a smile. "I'm perfectly well, Your Majesty." "Good." He nodded. Didn't leave. "That's good." The silence stretched between them, awkward and oddly endearing. "Would you like to come in?" Carenza finally asked. Relief flickered across his face. "If you're amenable." She stepped aside, and he entered her chambers with the careful movements of a man walking on thin ice. The fire was already roaring. She'd learned quickly that he needed warmth, but his skin still held that permanent chill when he sat beside her on the settee. "You don't have to keep visiting," Carenza said softly. "If conception hasn't occurred yet, we can simply try again in a few weeks when I wanted to see you." The words hung in the air, raw and unplanned. Tavian looked almost startled by them, as if they'd escaped without permission. He amended quickly. "I wanted to ensure you were settling in properly. The staff is treating you well? You have everything you need?" "Everyone has been kind." Carenza studied his face, noting the shadows that seemed slightly lighter than the night before. "You look better today. Less gray." Tavian glanced down at his hands, flexing his fingers. "I felt different this morning. Warmer, somehow. It's probably nothing." But they both knew it wasn't nothing. That night, they came together again. And the night after. And the night after that. Each time, Tavian wore the blindfold. Each time, the candles were extinguished. Each time, they maintained the careful fiction that this was merely an arrangement, a contract fulfilled in darkness. But things began to change. He started arriving earlier, before sunset. They would eat dinner together in her chambers, talking about nothing and everything. She learned that he hated the taste of wine, but drank it because it was expected. He learned that she had taught herself to read by stealing books from her stepmother's library. "What was your favorite?" he asked one evening, absently tracing patterns on her palm. "Tales of the Moonsingers." Carenza smiled at the memory. "Stories about the witches who could heal with moonlight. My mother used to tell me those stories before she died." Tavian's fingers stilled on her hand. "Do you remember her well?" "Pieces. Her voice. Her hands. The way she smelled like night-blooming jasmine." Carenza's throat tightened. I remember her telling me that the moon was watching over us, that its light could heal any wound. Do you still believe that? I don't know what I believe anymore. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her palm. Cold lips, warm gesture, the contradiction of him. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for what they did to her, what they did to you. Kerensa couldn't speak. No one had ever apologized for her mother's death. No one had ever acknowledged that perhaps, just perhaps, an injustice had been done. Days turned to weeks. The autumn deepened, frost creeping across the castle windows each morning, melting when the sun rose. And Tavian kept coming to her. He shared things now. State matters that troubled him. Old grievances with neighboring kingdoms. His frustration with advisors who saw him as a dying king rather than a ruling one. They're already positioning themselves for the succession, he said one night, lying beside her in the darkness. Choosing which cousin they'll support when I'm gone, as if I'm already dead. Kerensa rolled onto her side, facing him even though she couldn't see him. Tell them to stop. I've tried. They see my illness and think I'm weak. Then show them you're not. She found his hand, lacing their fingers together. You chose me against all their objections. You defied their expectations. That's not weakness. That's strength. He was quiet for a long moment. Then his other hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. You believe in me, he said, sounding almost confused. Why? Because you looked at me, and you didn't see the curse. You saw me. She felt his breath catch. Felt the moment something shifted between them. Something neither of them was supposed to feel. Kerensa, he whispered, and the way he said her name made her heart ache. Then he kissed her, and it was different from before. Not careful, not controlled. This kiss was desperate and tender and terrifying in its honesty. When they came together that night, it felt like falling. Afterward, she noticed him shivering violently despite the roaring fire. His skin was ice against hers. She wrapped herself around him, pressing every inch of warmth she had into his frozen body. You're getting worse, she whispered. It comes and goes. Don't lie to me. He was silent. Then, quietly, when I'm with you, it's better. When you're close, the cold retreats. I don't understand why. But Kerensa was beginning to understand, beginning to suspect something impossible. The next morning, she sought out Queen Mother Nerida. I need to know about my mother, Kerensa said. The truth, not the official story, not the execution records, the truth about what she actually was. Nerida studied her for a long moment. Then she gestured to a chair. Sit down, child. This will take some time. What Kerensa learned shattered everything she thought she knew. Her mother hadn't been a death witch. She'd been a healer, a moon singer, one of the last practitioners of an ancient magic that could cure any illness, lift any curse. Then why was she executed? Kerensa demanded. Because someone powerful wanted her dead. Nerida's silver eyes were sad. Someone who benefited from her removal? Someone who framed her for murders she didn't commit. Who? I don't know, but I've spent decades trying to find out. Nerida reached over and took Kerensa's hand. When I saw you at the ceremony, I felt something. A warmth that reminded me of the old stories. And when you touched my son that first night, when you lay beside him and shared your warmth. Understanding crashed over Kerensa like a wave. The shadows retreated, she whispered. Yes. Nerida's grip tightened. Your mother's gift didn't die with her, Kerensa. It lives in you. And I have to believe, that you might be the one who can save my son. 2 months into the marriage, Kerensa realized she was pregnant. The healer confirmed it with a gentle smile, pressing herbs into her hands and offering advice she barely heard. Her mind was spinning. An heir. She was carrying Tavian's child. The contract was fulfilled. He would have no reason to keep visiting now. That evening, she waited in her chambers, trying to find the words. Tavian arrived at sunset as he always did now, a small smile on his face that made him look almost boyish. "You look troubled," he said immediately, crossing to take her hands. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." Kerensa forced herself to meet his eyes. "I have news. Good news, I think." "Tell me." "I'm pregnant." She watched his face carefully, bracing for the relief, the satisfaction, and the polite withdrawal that would follow. The contract was fulfilled. He no longer needed her. Instead, Tavian went absolutely still. His hands tightened on hers, and his eyes, those winter storm eyes, filled with something she'd never seen before. Joy. Pure, unguarded joy. "You're certain?" he whispered. "The healer confirmed it this morning." He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. She felt him trembling against her, felt the cold of his body seeping through her clothes, but beneath it all, she felt something else. Warmth, spreading from his chest, from his heart. "Thank you," he murmured against her hair. "Thank you. Thank you." "Tavian, I need to ask you something." Kerensa pulled back enough to see his face. "Now that the contract is fulfilled, will you still come to me?" His expression shifted. Confusion first, then understanding, then something like hurt. "You think I've only been coming because of the contract?" It's what we agreed." "Kerensa." He cupped her face in his cold hands, forcing her to look at him. "I haven't come to you for the contract in weeks. I come because—" He stopped, his jaw clenching. "I come because I can't stay away. Because when I'm not with you, all I can think about is when I'll see you again. Because you make me feel alive in ways I never thought possible." Her heart was racing. "Tavian, be careful. The curse." "I know." His voice broke. "I know, and I've tried to stop. Tried to keep my distance. But you're—" He pressed his forehead to hers. "You're everything, Kerensa. Everything I never thought I could have." Tears were streaming down her face. "Don't say that. Please don't say that." "Why not?" "It's true. Because I love you." The words escaped before she could stop them, raw and terrified and absolutely honest. "I love you, and I can't watch you die because of it." Tavian went rigid. For one terrible moment, Kerensa saw something flicker in his eyes. Fear. Resignation. And beneath it all, a desperate, consuming love that mirrored her own. "Kerensa," he whispered. "My Kerensa, I—" He stopped mid-word, his face contorted with pain. His hand flew to his chest, clutching at his heart. "Tavian!" He staggered, and she caught him, lowering them both to the floor. His body was convulsing, his skin turning gray before her eyes. The black veins that had been spreading slowly for weeks now surged forward, racing across his chest, up his neck, toward his face. "No, no, no." Kerensa pressed her hands to his chest, trying to warm him, but he was cold, colder than she'd ever felt him. "Guards! Someone help! The king is dying!" Tavian's eyes found hers. Even through his agony, she saw him trying to speak. "Don't. Regret." He gasped. "Never. Regret." His eyes rolled back. His body went limp. "Tavian!" The doors burst open. Guards flooded in, followed by Nerita, followed by healers. But Kerensa barely registered them. She was clutching her husband's frozen body, feeling his heart stutter beneath her palms. "He confessed his love," she sobbed. "I made him confess his love, and now he's not dead yet." Nerita's voice was sharp, cutting through her panic. "But he will be soon if we don't act." The healers swarmed around him, but their expressions grew grimmer by the moment. "The shadow has reached his heart," one of them announced. "We can slow it, but we cannot stop it. He has hours at most." Kerensa felt the world tilting beneath her. "There must be something," she begged. "His mother said I might be able to save him. My mother was a moon singer. A healer. Please, tell me what to do. The healers exchanged uncertain glances, but Nerida stepped forward, her silver eyes blazing with desperate hope. Your mother's magic was bound before her death, she said. She did it herself, I believe, to protect you. The seal that holds the binding would have been entrusted to someone close, but bindings can be broken. How? The seal. There's always a physical object that anchors the binding. Nerida gripped Kerensa's shoulders. Your stepmother. She would have it. Your father's estate. Whatever was left of your mother's belongings. The seal would be there. Kerensa's blood turned to ice. I have to go back. I have to face Lysara. You have hours, Nerida reminded her. Perhaps less. Kerensa looked down at Tavian's gray face, at the black veins now visible on his cheeks, at the frost forming on his pale lips. Then I'd better ride fast. The Vorn estate had never looked so sinister. Kerensa arrived at midnight, her horse lathered and heaving. She'd ridden harder than she'd ever ridden, pushing through the darkness, through her fear, through the terrible knowledge that every moment she wasted brought Tavian closer to death. The guards Nerida had sent with her fanned out around the property. Kerensa didn't wait for them. She strode through the front door as if she owned it, because technically she did. She was queen now. Lysara was waiting in the main hall, draped in a robe, her face a mask of cold fury. So the queen deigns to visit, she spat. Come to gloat? I need my mother's belongings. Kerensa didn't waste time with pleasantries. Whatever was left after her execution, whatever you kept. Lysara laughed, high and brittle. And why would I give you anything? Because if you don't, I will have this house searched stone by stone, and when we find what I'm looking for, I will have you arrested for obstruction. On whose authority? On mine. Kerensa stepped closer, letting Lysara see the desperation in her eyes. My husband is dying. I need the seal that binds my mother's magic. I know it exists, and I know you have it. Something flickered in Lysara's expression. Surprise. And beneath it, something uglier. You figured it out, Lysara said slowly. I wondered if you ever would. Figured what out? Your mother wasn't executed for murder. Lysara's smile was cruel. She was executed because I needed her dead. The world went silent. What are you saying? Kerensa whispered. Your mother was a healer, the best in the kingdom. People came from everywhere seeking her help. Lysara began to circle her, predatory and slow. Including my first husband, the one I poisoned slowly over 3 years so I could inherit his fortune and marry your father. Kerensa couldn't breathe. Your mother discovered what I was doing, threatened to expose me. Lysara shrugged. So I exposed her first, killed 7 beggars with poison, made it look like dark magic, blamed it all on the Moon Witch. You murdered them. Kerensa's voice shook. You murdered innocent people to frame my mother. I did what I had to do. Lysara stopped circling, facing Kerensa directly. And I kept the seal as insurance. Your mother bound her own magic to protect you. Gave me the seal willingly, believing I'd keep you safe. Where is it? Lysara's smile widened. You'll never find it. Yes, she will. Both women turned. Marin stood in the doorway, her face pale, her hands trembling. Marin! Lysara's voice sharpened. Go back to bed. I heard everything. Marin's eyes were fixed on her mother with horror. You killed father? Your first husband? You framed an innocent woman? Marin, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Marin's voice cracked. I've spent my whole life believing Kerensa was cursed, believing her mother was a murderer, hating her because you told me to. She turned to Kerensa, tears streaming down her face. I know where the seal is. Mother keeps it in a hidden compartment in her jewelry box. I'll get it. Marin, don't you dare. But Marin was already running up the stairs. Lysara lunged after her, but Kerensa caught her arm, holding her back with strength she didn't know she possessed. You destroyed my family, Kerensa said quietly. You killed my mother. You made me believe I was cursed. You are cursed, Lysera hissed. Your mother's love killed her. Your love will kill your precious king. That's what Moonsingers do. They love so deeply they destroy everyone around them. No. Kerensa's voice was steady now. Moonsingers love so deeply they heal everyone around them. That's what my mother did. That's what I'm going to do. Marin returned, breathless, pressing a small silver box into Kerensa's hands. Inside, nestled on black velvet, was a crescent moon pendant. Kerensa's mother's pendant. She recognized it from the fragments of memory she'd carried for 20 years. Break it, Marin said. That's what binds the magic. Break it, and you'll be free. Kerensa looked at the pendant, at the last piece of her mother she'd ever hold. Then she threw it against the stone floor with all her strength. It shattered, and light exploded through her. Warmth flooded her veins, warmth she'd always felt but never understood. It wasn't just body heat, it was magic, moon magic, the power her mother had given everything to protect. No! Lysera screamed, no! But Kerensa was already running for her horse. The castle was in chaos when she arrived. Servants wept in corridors. Advisors gathered in tight clusters, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. Guards stood rigid at every door, their faces gray with grief. Kerensa pushed through all of them, following the pull in her chest, the newly awakened magic guiding her toward him. The royal chambers were crowded with healers and priests. Nerita knelt beside the bed, clutching her son's frozen hand, her silver eyes red-rimmed with tears. And on the bed, barely recognizable, lay Tavian. The shadow had consumed him almost entirely. His skin was black with dark veins, his lips blue, and frost forming on his closed eyelids. The only sign of life was the faint, irregular movement of his chest. He's almost gone, one of the healers said quietly. Minutes now. Perhaps less. Everyone out. Kerensa's voice rang through the chamber with authority she'd never felt before. Now. The healers hesitated, but Nerita rose and began ushering them toward the door. Do it, the Queen Mother said. Whatever you're going to do it now. The door closed. Kerensa was alone with her dying husband. She climbed onto the bed, straddling his frozen body, pressing her palms flat against his chest. The cold was agonizing, burning her skin, but she didn't pull away. I love you, she said fiercely. Do you hear me? I love you, and I am not going to let you die. She closed her eyes and reached for the warmth inside her. It came like sunrise. Light poured from her hands, golden and warm, sinking into Tavian's chest. She felt the shadow recoil, felt it writhe and shriek in a frequency beyond hearing. It fought back, clawing at her, trying to drag her into the cold. But Kerensa had spent her whole life being cold, being alone, being forgotten. She wasn't cold anymore. She poured everything into him, every ounce of warmth, every shred of love, every bit of magic her mother had sacrificed everything to give her. Come back to me, she begged. Please, come back. The shadow screamed. And then, like ice breaking in spring, it shattered. Light exploded through the room, momentarily blinding. Kerensa felt herself thrown backward, felt strong arms catch her before she hit the floor. Arms that were warm. She opened her eyes. Tavian was sitting up, his skin flushed with color, his gray eyes clear and bright and filled with tears. The black veins were gone, all of them. His chest rose and fell with strong, steady breaths. Kerensa, he gasped. She threw herself into his arms, sobbing against his shoulder, feeling his heart beat strong and fast beneath her cheek. You saved me, he whispered into her hair. You actually saved me. I told you I loved you. She pulled back enough to see his face, this beautiful face no longer marked by shadow. Did you think I was going to let you die? He laughed, the sound cracked and wet with emotion. Then he kissed her, and his lips were warm. Finally, blissfully warm. The door burst open. Narita rushed in, followed by healers and guards and half the court. The shadow. One healer gasped, examining Tavian with trembling hands. It's completely gone. Not suppressed. Gone. As if it was never there. The curse, Narita breathed. The curse is broken? Tavian looked at Kerensa, his warm hand cradling her face. My ancestors' curse required love to break it, he said slowly. But not just any love. It required a love willing to sacrifice everything. A love that burned brighter than the shadow's cold. Your mother told me, Kerensa said softly. The curse was meant to be broken by love, but every king who tried to love died because the shadow was stronger than the warmth. Until you. Tavian pressed his forehead to hers. Until your love. Your magic. Your impossible, stubborn, beautiful warmth. The entire bloodline, Narita whispered, sinking into a chair. If the curse is truly broken, then Tavian's children, my grandchildren, will never suffer as I did. Tavian's hand moved to Kerensa's stomach where their child grew. They'll live full lives. They'll be free to love. Kerensa covered his hand with hers, tears streaming down her face. 6 months later. The gardens of Valdoria were in full bloom. Kerensa walked among the roses, their fragrance filling the warm summer air. In her arms, wrapped in soft white linen, slept her daughter. Silvana, named for Nerita's eyes, which the baby had inherited. Behind her, Tavian's footsteps approached. She didn't need to turn to know it was him. The mate bond hummed between them, strong and bright and wonderfully warm. There you are. His arms wrapped around her from behind, pulling her against his chest. I've been looking everywhere. Silvana wanted fresh air. Kerensa leaned back into his warmth. Still strange, after all these months, to feel warmth radiating from him instead of cold. And her mother needed a moment of peace. From what? From the delegation of moon singers who arrived this morning. Kerensa smiled. They want me to help them rebuild the old academies, train a new generation of healers. And will you? I think so. She turned in his arms, careful not to wake the baby. My mother gave everything to protect this gift. The least I can do is share it. Tavian kissed her forehead, then her lips, soft and sweet. I have news too, he said. Lysara's trial concluded this morning. She's been sentenced to life imprisonment for the murders of 9 people, including your mother. Kerensa closed her eyes, feeling a weight lift that she'd carried for 20 years. And Marin? Pardoned. She's been instrumental in rebuilding relations between the Crown and the remaining Moonsinger families. Tavian paused. She asked to see you, to apologize properly. I'd like that. They walked together through the gardens, their daughter sleeping peacefully between them. Narita waved from a bench near the fountain, her silver eyes bright with joy. You know, Tavian said quietly, my mother told me something the day she chose you. What's that? She said she'd attended dozens of mating ceremonies over the years, watched hundreds of women pass through. But you were the first one who ever showed kindness to a stranger without expecting anything in return. Kerensa thought of that day, that desperate day when she'd given her only water to an old woman who couldn't breathe. Such a small thing. Such an insignificant moment. I didn't know who she was, Kerensa said. That's exactly why it mattered. Tavian stopped walking, turning her to face him. You showed her who you really were, and who you really were was exactly what this kingdom needed. What I needed. A cursed witch's daughter? A woman with enough warmth to break a centuries-old curse. He smiled, that rare smile that transformed his face from beautiful to breathtaking. A woman brave enough to love a dying king. A woman kind enough to help a stranger and strong enough to save a kingdom. Kerensa reached up to touch his face, still marveling at the warmth beneath her fingers. We saved each other, she said softly. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. Is it? Love isn't one person saving another. She rose on her toes to kiss him. It's two people choosing each other, again and again, even when it's terrifying, even when it might destroy them. And it didn't destroy us. No. She smiled against his lips. It set us free. In her arms, Sylvana stirred, her tiny fingers reaching toward her father's face. Tavian caught them gently, pressing a kiss to the small palm. "Hello, little moon," he whispered. "Ready to change the world?" Carenza watched them, her husband and her daughter, standing in the warm summer sunshine of a kingdom transformed. Once, she had been forgotten, overlooked, cursed. Now she was queen, mother, healer, beloved. And it had all started with a cup of water, given freely to a stranger who needed it. Small kindnesses, Carenza thought, they change everything. Behind them, the castle rose against the blue sky, no longer cold and forbidding but warm with life and hope. And in the distance, barely visible on the horizon, the moon was rising, watching over them all.